Hello, everyone. Hello and welcome. So great to see so many of you here. My name is Amy Hamlin, and we have Nichole Dandrea-Russert with us, who is a registered dietitian. And we're going to just give it a few minutes as people come in. And I want to encourage you, for Nicole's sake, to put in the chat where you are, your city and state, and also your favorite high fiber food. By the way, we have Missouri, Wisconsin, quinoa. That's a new state, the state of quinoa. Um, Illinois, lentils, Georgia, Vermont, black beans. That's great. So yummy.
So many Bean fans.
Yeah, a lot of bean fans, which is
Great.
great. In case anyone doesn't know this already, um, there was some research that says that legumes are the food most associated with longevity around the world. Now, I would have thought it was leafy greens, and they are super healthy, but legumes are the food most associated with longevity around the world. So that is very exciting. It's great to see people from all over the country, Illinois, Wisconsin, Arkansas, mycelium.
Very cool.
Technically, mushrooms are not a plant food. They're their own thing. They're not an animal food. They're not a plant food. But a lot of times we pair them with plant foods just because they are super healthy. Avocado is yummy. Someone from Texas and Minnesota, Virginia. All right. This is great.
Great way to start our webinar here. I love the
Yes, it
variety
is.
too.
It's great. I am going to officially start now and welcome you all. I'm so glad to have you all here today. This webinar is brought to you by the Coalition for Healthy School Food, and we've been around for 21 years. And for the last few years, we've been doing this a newsletter every month with an associated webinar, and it's for food service directors. And food service directors, you're certainly welcome to invite your cooks or any of your staff that you think might be interested in these webinars once per month. And we also have a very casual, it's called the Veg Edge, where you can come on to a Zoom meeting and the topic each month is whatever you want to talk about. So that's a more casual thing. So I'm very, very excited to introduce Nichole Dandrea-Russert, who's a master's degree, and she's a registered dietitian, nutritionist. And the topic today is Fiber First, a sustainable approach to weight loss. So, Nichole is a plant-based dietitian, author, and founder of Purely Planted. She's passionate about helping people discover how simple, fiber-rich plant foods can support health, energy, and lifelong wellness. Through her writing, speaking, and nutrition education, Nichole helps make plant-based or plant-forward eating approachable, practical, and enjoyable for individuals, families, and communities. She is the author of The Fiber Effect and the Vegan Athlete's Nutrition Handbook, and co-author of the award-winning Real Superfoods Cookbook and Powered by Plants Cookbook. So she's done quite a bit of writing. I want to welcome you, Nichole. Thank you so much, and take it away.
Thank you, Amy. Hi, everybody. It's so good to see you all, and it's great to see where you're all from and your favorite plant-based or fiber-rich foods. I share many of them. When I was thinking about it, I was having a hard time choosing, but y'all got some great ones there. So thanks for having me today. It's truly an honor to be here. And yeah, so I'm going to load up my slides. I've got some slides to share, and we'll have some questions at the end. I'd love to have some more conversation around fiber after we do our presentation. So let's get started. Alrighty. And thank you for the lovely introduction, Amy. All right, here we go. All right, so today we are going to talk about a sustainable approach to weight loss through dietary fiber and foods that are high in fiber. You already listed a bunch of them, so you guys are already doing the thing. But let's go into a little bit more detail. Oh, of course, I'm having hard. There we go. Okay, it always takes me a second to figure out the tech component. All right, I just want to share a little bit more about my personal story. I know Amy shared some about my professional background, but part of my personal story really led me down this path of fiber-rich foods, my passion for fiber, really, and plant-based foods in general, for many, many years. I personally lived on cheese and dairy. I had dairy for every meal and snack, chicken with maybe a side of vegetables, and also chronic constipation. I should probably put four C's because I had chronic constipation, not just constipation. But I was getting very little fiber in my diet. And, usually it was just like a little side for me. And then, so I was a plant, but I had been a plant-based diet, or I've been a dietitian for over 30 years. But for the first 15 years, I was working in a hospital setting. And alongside that hospital setting, I would go home at night and I would play around with dark chocolate. I really like dark chocolate, and I would add to healthy plant-based foods to it just because, blueberries and flaxseed and walnuts are, knowing that they're really healthy, I would add them to dark chocolate to make, like, quote, a healthy snack. That became a business for 10 years. So I had a chocolate company for 10 years, and through the chocolate company, I was adding plant-based foods to the chocolate, and I would blog about them. And every single time I blogged about the chocolate, or I did research on the plant-based ingredient that I was adding to the chocolate, I was just wowed. I was blown away by the research that I was finding. So through the chocolate company, I ended up adding more plant-based foods to my plate and eventually going all in on plants. And I went vegan for ethical reasons. And the dietitian in me was like, is this healthy? Is it sustainable? Can I do this? And is it good for my clients? So I had so many questions. And the resounding answer was like, yes to all of those things. So I closed the chocolate company after 10 years and just made it, became my mission to educate people about all the benefits of fiber-rich plant-based foods. And I will say that I had a lot of recipe disasters going into it because I didn't know how to switch from cheese and chicken and all the things I was eating into adding more plants to my plate in a sustainable and satisfying, nourishing way. So it took some time, but with some time, I'm just so grateful I followed this path and noticed so many health benefits myself. Today we're going to talk about the weight management benefits of fiber-rich foods. And I just want to throw this out there because, weight is such a challenging thing for so many. We're seeing commercials about GLP-1s, and it's just as a society as a whole, it's a really difficult thing to manage, and it's not because of willpower. If it was just simply because of willpower, it would be so much easier for all of us if we just put the practices into place. But truth be told, our environment makes it so difficult for us to make healthy choices. Most of us are consuming more, 55 to 60% of our diet is convenient, ultra processed foods. It's all around us. When you walk into a grocery store, so many foods are packaged and it's easy. We're busy. We have busy lifestyles. The busier we are, the more companies are catering towards our busy lifestyles, making things like, even, of course, like rice, we might be able to cook on the stovetop while we're doing some work in the background, but it comes prepackaged and cooked. So all we need to do is heat it up in the microwave. So the easier it is for, many, and this is what companies are really pertaining to, but they're also creating foods that are hyper palatable. So if you look at our modern food environment, in the grocery stores, these packaged foods, you notice like the salty flavors, the sweet flavors, these mouth feels, there are scientific there's food science behind the way that these foods are for food-like products are formulated. The mouthfeel is meant to make us crave more. The flavors are meant, they actually trigger chemicals in our brain that make us want more. So our food environment really isn't in our favor when we're looking at these everyday convenient foods. And many of these foods are so high in calories and either have very little to zero fiber. So we stay hungry when we consume these foods, when we consume convenient foods, they're not satisfying. We want more, we crave more. And this happens on many different levels. Again, there's like our palates want more of the mouthfeel, and then our brain signals, when we have sugar, we want more of that sugar. We want to keep those chemicals going, those feel-good hormone, the neurotransmitters in our brains going. Then there's also the hormones. So our hunger hormones and our full hormones aren't regulated when we're consuming these foods that are convenient and don't have the fiber and the nutrients that we need to thrive. So I like to think of ghrelin, which is the hormone that signals that we're hungry. As like, I always think of it to remember them as a gremlin. It's like this little hungry gremlin that comes in and is like, I'm hungry. I need more food. So that's ghrelin, and it's a signals to our brain that I'm hungry. I need to eat. Leptin is the hormone that tells us when we're full. When we consume fiber-rich foods that are also nutrient dense, our body signals the leptin hormone that tells us we're full. It's time to stop eating. Um, Other things that can affect this other than convenience foods, when we have those convenience foods, these hormones are not regulated. But poor sleep can also increase cravings. If you've ever noticed, you've probably been in a situation where you did not get enough sleep, and that can leave you the next day not just tired, but you're craving more sweet foods, more salty foods, maybe more fatty foods because our hormones are trying to regulate. That lack of sleep can really trigger a cascade of hormones that have us craving foods that are not serving our best health. Chronic stress is another one that can increase appetite. So, not just managing our food environment, but also sleep and chronic stress. And these things are, bidirectional. Not eating well can impact our sleep and can also create stress hormones. So, really, they kind of go both ways, but doing what we can in our lifestyle to help facilitate better sleep and mitigate stress where we can. We all have stressors, but even taking a deep breath during the day can help sometimes alleviate just a little bit of stress. So I have a question for you all as we get into this. Let's see if I can. Okay, there we go. I can see the chat. If you are we getting enough fiber? So more than 95% of Americans are not getting enough fiber in their diet. For women, we need a minimum of 25 grams of fiber a day. For men, a minimum of 38 grams of fiber a day. These are the minimums. When I see folks who are eating exclusively plant-based and adding lots of fiber-rich foods to their plate every single meal, I see people getting upwards between 60 and 75 grams of fiber a day, and they're tolerating it because they've been doing that for a long time. So it's not something where if you're eating 10 grams of fiber now today, tomorrow you go to 40 grams of fiber because you'll come after me. Your belly will not be happy. So gradually increasing your fiber intake is so important. It's a really important part of that fiber journey. And we're going to talk more about that as we move into this presentation. But for right now, I would love for you to drop in the chat if you know how much fiber you're getting in a day, and if you're getting enough. For women, it's 25 grams a day is a minimum, and for men, it's 38 grams a day. If you're getting enough fiber, put a one in the chat. If you are not getting enough fiber, put a two in the chat. And if you don't know, please put a three in the chat. I'm checking. We'll check. Okay, one. Oh, great. Two, three, got some twos and threes. Okay, we got a wide variety, just like we want in our plant-based foods. Okay, we've got several three. Okay, amazing. All right, so we have some that are on the mark. Wonderful. We have some that are twos. If you know that you're not getting enough, that's great. It's a great place to start. It's good to know. I think knowing your fiber number is key. And if you take one thing from this webinar today, or actually we'll say one of two things. We'll take one thing, know your fiber number. And one way to do that easily is there's some of these free apps like Chronometer or MyFitnessPal, where you can log in your intake for the day. Just get your fiber number, know where you stand. And then we're going to talk about today ways that you can easily increase your fiber intake slowly. So Great. This is a great start. You all, whether you are one, two, or three, you know that's very important. So we've got that baseline. Okay, so where is fiber found? Many of you already know this because you already added so many beautiful fiber-rich foods to our chat earlier. Beans, peas, lentils, nuts, seeds, whole grains, fruits, veggies, are all rich in fiber. So anything that comes from the ground, anything from the earth is going to be high in fiber that has been minimally or not processed at all. Um, Versus like convenience foods that have been heavily processed and the fiber foods been or the fiber has been removed. Okay, so I want to talk about the three key things that fiber does, how fiber acts in the body to um, help with weight management. So, number one is fiber helps to fill us up. When we think about fiber, we don't have digestive enzymes to break down fiber. Fiber is broken down by the microorganisms in our gut. So we're going to talk about that in a second. But when you think about fiber-rich foods, the fiber in those foods um, passes through a hole. Or really, we need to help to move it through by chewing thoroughly, by drinking plenty of water. And as it moves through, it takes up a lot of space in our digestive system, in our gut. So we can eat a lot of food. We can eat, more quantity, but like less overall calories. So you can fill your plate up with a variety of beautiful, colorful foods and feel super satisfied while still eating much less calories. So that's one way that it can help to manage weight because we end up, first of all, it slows down digestion when we eat fiber-rich foods. It fills us up pretty quickly, and then it helps to slow digestion. So fiber sits in our digestive system a little bit longer and it helps to kind of slow down digestion, which helps to signal that we're full. In fact, we what we're actually I'm going to hold off on that point. I was going to talk about one of the hormones that's triggered, but we'll talk about that in a couple of slides. So it increases overall fullness, and then it also prevents us from overeating. So as I mentioned, you can eat a lot of food, a lot of volume, but still lower calories. And then also, because it passes through more slowly, it helps to keep us satisfied longer. There's also interesting research showing that when we start our day with a fiber-rich meal, we are more likely to make better decisions later in that day when it comes to food and continue making fiber-fueled decisions throughout the day or healthier foods that are foods that keep us healthy because I'll go to the next slide because fiber also helps to stabilize blood sugar. So if you think about this, I'm just going to paint this picture. You can see the graph to the right here. When we have a low fiber meal, let's say we have a bowl of like frosted flakes in the morning that has no fiber, and that's all we have, frosted flakes in the cereal. That's a high sugar cereal. We eat the frosted flakes and we get a very quick spike in our blood sugar within 30 minutes. And then it drops really low. So we have like a little boost of sugar and a little boost of energy, and then it drops low. And all of a sudden, 30 minutes later, we're hungry. We want some more. We want another bowl of cereal, or we want something else to eat, and we're not satisfied. And we're also crashing. We're also feeling really low on energy. So you go from high energy to low energy versus, let's say, a bowl of oatmeal, which is very high in fiber. You can add even more fiber-rich foods, like somebody mentioned in the chat earlier that raspberries were one of their favorite fiber foods. You can add raspberries or other berries to it, or nuts and seeds to it, and that helps to boost the fiber. It actually adds some protein as well. Those nuts and seeds are high in protein. The oatmeal has some protein. The fiber and the protein together, picture it as like this little ball in your stomach, which allows for a slow release of sugar into your blood gradually over a 2 to 3 hour period. So not only are you not getting the rapid spike in sugar and the rapid drop, but you're getting a steady release of sugar into your bloodstream over a period of time. So this allows for steady energy. It allows for no energy crashes. So you've got steady energy. You're in a calmer, grounded state. It affects your mood. It affects your focus. And it allows for that energy to be used versus stored as fat. When you have those spikes in sugar, It also releases insulin, your hormone insulin that is responsible for getting sugar to your cells. You can only use so much at a time when it comes to energy. So you might use some of that as energy, but any excess is going to be stored as fat. So when you have those rapid spikes in sugar, any excess of that rapid spike is going to be stored as fat compared to when you have a slow release of energy over a 2 to 3 hour period, you're using that energy over a 2 to 3 hour period. So we're seeing just a slow blood sugar absorption where we don't have those blood sugar spikes and we've got just that steady energy. And that steady energy, going back to what I mentioned about the research showing that we make better decisions in subsequent meals when we start our day with high fiber foods. Um, we're if you think about having steady energy, just any time where you had steady energy versus like, an energy crash, your state of mind, how do you feel? You feel when you have that steady energy, you feel more grounded, you feel more stable, you're making decisions from a better place when it comes to mental health. So you are more likely to make better food decisions. And then the third way is that fiber feeds the gut. This is one of my favorite topics. It's so complex and it's so interesting. But what we know about fiber, what we once thought about fiber, and I still talk about when I talk about fiber to groups of people or workshops, I always get a hand raise that says, "Can I just take some Metamucil?" And Metamucil is fiber, but you're missing out all of the beneficial compounds that come with the whole food. So, whole plant-based foods like apples and oranges and dark leafy greens and all the foods that you see here in the gut. Red peppers and broccoli and avocado is packed with fiber. Beans were mentioned lots in the chat. These come with not just fiber, but there's a whole matrix of nutrients. And fiber definitely is like the main fuel for our healthy gut microbes, which is the source of so many health benefits that we're going to talk about here in a second. But also, when they start breaking down that fiber, it also releases things like phytonutrients or phytochemicals. These are compounds in plants that help to that a lot of them, many of them act like antioxidants and they help to decrease inflammation. And they help to, when we decrease inflammation, that's really the root of so many issues that we see physically and mentally and for our brains. You really see this whole cascade of health benefits. So fiber feeds the healthy bacteria in our gut. And I like to think of our gut bacteria as like our friends. Think of your gut as like trillions of friends that you're taking along for the ride, and they are begging you every day for some fiber. That's how you keep your friends alive. And when you consume these fiber-rich foods and they start munching away at the fiber, they produce these compounds called short-chain fatty acids. And these short-chain fatty acids is where it gets, complex, but also super interesting. There is emerging research every single day coming out. These short-chain fatty acids are kind of like signaling molecules that go in our entire body. They turn on our feel-good nor they help to synthesize our feel good neurotransmitters to our brain. So serotonin, they help to trigger synthesis of melatonin, our sleep hormone. So even if we're consuming, a fiber-rich breakfast, that can impact how we're sleeping at night. These short chain fatty acids, and we know also, just backing up to the main topic of today, when we sleep well, our metabolism runs more efficiently and we make better choices in what we eat the next day. Um, and then also short chain fatty acids help to facilitate efficient metabolism, including like cholesterol metabolism, keeping our cholesterol in check, as well as just, fueling our body with what it needs in terms of the nutrients that we use every single day. It also helps with digestion. Short chain fatty acids help to maintain our gut barrier integrity and help to build a resilient gut. It also helps to support our immune system. When we have a healthy immune system, it helps everything else function better. So they're all, some are directly related, some are indirectly related, but all of it is supporting our overall well-being and how well we thrive every single day. And that ultimately ends up going back to our, metabolism and weight and our food choices and how we feel day in and day out. So I can talk about this topic for the whole hour, but if you have questions, we can talk about it further at the end. Okay, so fiber benefits also, of course, like way beyond weight management. It supports heart health. I just mentioned digestive health. Of course, it keeps us regular when we're consuming it, when we're drinking enough water alongside fiber. It helps to regulate hormones, not just our insulin levels that are released when we have the high blood sugar spikes, but also just like regulating insulin to keep our blood sugar steady, or it helps to keep our blood sugar steady, which regulates insulin, I should say. It helps to regulate excess estrogen. So women who are pre-menopausal, who have, extreme PMS, it can help to regulate excess estrogen in those cases and other cases, and even in like certain types of cancer, like breast cancer and prostate cancer. So fiber plays a part in so many different chronic disease conditions. And I will say too that there's some really interesting research that plant-based diets, so whole food plant-based diets are whole, like what we've been talking about here, legumes, beans, peas, lentils, whole grains. So grains that are not refined, they are whole intact, like buckwheat, like oatmeal, farro. Quinoa was mentioned earlier in the chat. So these whole grains are a part of this, the whole plant-based food eating, and then of course fruits and vegetables. And these whole plant-based foods, and some minimally processed. So I'll say like tofu and tempeh. Tempeh is an excellent source of fiber. Tempeh, if you haven't had it before, is a soy product. It's like a soy cake. So it's soybeans pressed into this rich, nutty tasting, almost like a patty, and it's an excellent source of protein and fiber. Those are minimally processed because anytime you take anything from its original state, like beans, when you cook them, they are minimally processed because we're cooking them. But of course, we have to eat cooked beans. So, I would say whole food, minimally processed fall into that whole food category. And then the ultra processed food is that's going to be the foods that you're finding on the grocery store shelves that's like says white flour or just says wheat flour, not whole wheat flour. Even flour itself is considered a processed form of the whole grain. So whole food, plant-based, going back to the research that I mentioned, um, low fat diets that are whole food plant-based, a diet that is mostly leaning on all the foods I just mentioned, have been shown to reverse heart disease and diabetes. So not just reduce the risk of these diseases, but actually reverse disease when people are in advanced stages of the disease. So people have gone off their diabetes medication completely. They have reversed their heart disease completely. Any kind of plaque buildup has been reversed completely. So, but through this whole food plant-based diet. And that is something that is of interest to you or a family member. Of course, we want to promote a way of eating and a lifestyle over, if there's an option for doing that for their overall health or for your overall health, that would be wonderful because we have control over that. It's something that we can do versus taking meds or ending up in surgery. But if your goal is just to feel good every day, sleep well, make healthy food choices, then you may just add some plants to your plate. And anytime you add plant-based foods to your diet, it's going to be beneficial. You're going to be adding that fiber. Let's talk about some practical strategies. Okay, I just mentioned adding. So let's just do a little mindset shift. I feel like whenever we talk about a certain way of eating that is different from the way that we are used to eating, it feels we can feel restricted or we feel there's a little bit of a barrier because someone's asking us to change something, but we're not asking you to change anything. Like I would just say, like picture this if if depending on where you're starting, just adding. some plants to your plate. Think of plant-based eating or adding some plants to your plate as a way of adding abundance to your plate. When you walk into a grocery store, think about the produce section and what you see. Or if you walk through a farmer's market, looking at that produce, looking at the colors alone, those big, vibrant, beautiful colors just light you up from the inside out. Like you just think about them, you see them and they light you up because they're vibrant, they're beautiful. You hear the term eat the rainbow that has been the old adage for many years. That applies here. Um, when we eat those colors, we are that it's doing like physiologically doing benefit to our body to our bodies and our minds. It's actually acting on our bodies and minds in a beneficial way. It's fighting inflammation. They're feeding our healthy gut bacteria. So these colors are the phytochemicals, but they're also that what accompanies them is that fiber, the fiber that we've been talking about. So think about just adding some of these colorful foods to your plate. So adding beans to your meals, adding fruit. I mentioned oatmeal. You know, if you're just doing oatmeal in the morning, what can you add into that? Think about layering your foods. What can you add? What plant-based foods, whether it's nuts or seeds or fruit to your oatmeal? If you just have plain pasta, what vegetables can you add to that pasta? Maybe choosing one or two. So swapping out, we're going to talk about swapping out for like some healthy snacks too in just a second. Um, some easy fiber upgrades. These are just simple things. You're not changing, you know, the food category that you're eating, but you're just changing the type of food in that category. So moving from white rice to brown rice or quinoa. Instead of doing traditional, you know, or traditional, I should say, white pasta, moving to whole grain or legume pasta. I just mentioned snacks. If you like something crunchy and salty, considering homemade popcorn or roasted chickpeas are actually one of my favorite snacks. They're so easy to make. They're done in about 20 minutes. You roast them in the oven for on 400 degrees for about 20 minutes or until they're crispy. Everyone's oven temperatures differ a little bit. You can put your favorite seasonings on them, and they make such a sustainable snack. They will keep you sustained all afternoon long because they are perfectly balanced with fiber and protein. And they also have so many nutrients that are critical for our overall well-being. Swapping sugary cereal for oatmeal or whole grain granola. There's some really great whole grain granola recipes. They're very easy to make at home. So you can lower the sugar content in the granola. Adding lentils to your pasta sauce or beans to tacos and soups. Here's a visual. We just talked about a visual in the grocery store, looking at those colors. If you want to take that color concept and move it to your meal, aim for 3 colors per meal. Look at this beautiful bowl on the right. It just is asking for us to dive into it. It's got sweet potato and leafy greens and red cabbage and edamame and maybe that's pickled red onions and avocado, whole grains. Just so much goodness in that bowl. And that dressing looks like maybe a nice tahini dressing that's also whole food. So you've got like so even tans count here. Tan is a color here because those whole grains are rich with fiber and B vitamins and phytochemicals. So we can definitely count that. But just thinking about aiming for 3 colors per meal. Now, if adding these fiber-rich foods is new to you, or if you know you're starting with 5 or 10 grams of fiber a day or 15, we want to do it slowly. So there isn't like a magic number here. If you are a numbers person, sometimes I'll recommend adding 5 grams of fiber per week and then letting your body adapt. But you can also just add like maybe one food a week. So if you don't normally consume beans, start with like the least offensive beans, like lentils or split peas. They're usually better tolerated than something like black beans or kidney beans. And add just 2 tablespoons. That's it. Add 2 tablespoons for one week. The next week, add 2 more tablespoons. And then, until you maybe reach half a cup of beans. And then maybe you want to try a different variety of beans and then start slow with that bean. So go slow with both quantity and the variety to minimize any digestive discomfort. And I will say, when your beans are probably like the most common food that cause discomfort, a couple of things with the beans. So again, starting slow with both quantity and variety, but also if you're cooking them from scratch, cooking them until they're like buttery soft. If you are sensitive to beans, buttery soft. Um, and or if you're consuming them canned is always great to have on hand. I always keep dry beans and canned beans at home for times that I haven't prepared ahead of time. I will opt for a canned bean. But if you're sensitive to beans, then rinsing them well can help minimize some of those gassy compounds. Cooking them more thoroughly once you're cooking them again, you can cook them a little bit more thoroughly. Um, and then if you're starting from scratch, you can soak them for 24 to 48 hours, switching the soaking water half like 12 hours into it. So switching that water 12 every 12 hours, and then starting with fresh water when you're cooking the beans after you've soaked them. So during that soaking water, start with fresh water to cook them, and adding a piece of kombu seaweed or fennel to that cooking water can also, my Philadelphia accent just came out. I said water. Um, it can also help to minimize some of those gassy compounds. But then, of course, drinking plenty of water. As I mentioned, fiber needs water to help pass it through, as well as chewing thoroughly. So chew your food really, really well. This can also help enhance mindfulness while we're chewing, which helps digestion because that mindfulness tells our digestive system or tells our it activates our nervous system that helps with like rest and digest. So it really helps with metabolism and ultimately weight management. Um, you can also try blending or chopping your food finely just to break down some of those fibers. And then cooked may be helpful for some versus raw. I personally can't, I don't digest raw broccoli very well, so I have to have it at least slightly steamed. So just knowing your own body, everybody is different. It's not like cooked is better than raw or raw is better than cooked. Like, yes, some nutrients are lost in cooking, some nutrients are enhanced in cooking. But really, when it comes down to just adding more plants to your plate, just consider what you tolerate best just to start eating more plants. Everybody's different. And because you're all working with kids, I just want to say fiber is very important for kids too. So many kids, uh, you know, complain about constipation. And of course, we know that, wait, convenience foods are available to kids across the country. So whenever we can get these whole plant-based foods into kids as well through fruit parfaits and bean tacos, offering things to kids or having them grow with, when kids grow what they eat, they're more likely to consume those foods. But again, using the color idea with kids, like how many colors can you get on your plate, making it a fun thing for them and giving them the agency to choose more plants. So laying it out. I'm a big fan of like taco bars or pasta bars or bowl bars, like making your own grain bowl, making your own taco bar, making your own pasta. So laying out all of these veggies and beans and grains for kids to just choose their own to make your own meal, it can be helpful because they're making their own decisions. Okay, fiber-rich breakfast ideas. We talked about oats quite a bit here. You can also do whole grain toast with avocado, radish, add some microgreens to that, add some pickled onion to that. So a variety. I always joke that I love avocado toast in the morning. You can never see the toast or the avocado because it's like a salad on top of the avocado, but it's so delicious. And it's such a great way to start the day with all of those with leafy greens and just all the fiber-rich foods. Chia pudding is excellent. It's something you can make at night before you go to bed. You can have it ready for the morning. It can be either a breakfast or a great snack that's super sustainable, so fiber packed. Chia seeds are a wonderful source of fiber. Adding some fruits and nuts and seeds to it makes it even more fiber rich. Smoothies, of course, are always a great way to go if it's easy for you and you enjoy smoothies. There's such an easy way to add fiber-rich foods to the smoothie. Whole grain cereal with fruits and nuts, overnight oats, another great option. You can prepare the night before. And then we have lunch ideas. So bean chili, lentil soups are always a wonderful way to add a wide variety of colorful vegetables and beans and grains. When you think about salads, leafy greens are certainly wonderful, and it would be great if we can all include leafy greens at every single meal. Um, but salads can be so much more than just leafy greens. I would say like opt for maybe three types of greens in your salad. So maybe it's kale and spinach and romaine, or arugula, romaine, and a red leaf lettuce. So think about variety when it comes to that, and also what else can you add to that salad? So maybe you add some cooked farro to it and some lentils, and aim for those three additional colors once again, and something like that wrap. Make it a salad wrap. That wrap looks fantastic. So again, just looking for those colors. Snack ideas. We talked about like the popcorn and the roasted chickpeas. Edamame is a great snack. You can make your own trail mix by throwing some nuts and seeds together, maybe a little bit of dried fruit, apples and peanut butter, just like, the old staple, which is fantastic. And then we have dinner ideas. I talked about like a taco bar or a pasta bar. This is great. Those are great for families where, everybody has different taste preferences and things that they like, because, not everyone's different in their preferences and what they can tolerate. So having options, plant-based options for those in the family is really helpful so that everybody is happy at the end and there's no fighting over dinner. Tacos with black beans and avocado, of course, adding some salsa in there. And if you like cilantro or any kind of herbs, you're always going to add some more color and nutrients, a little bit of fiber in the herbs. Stir fries, baked potatoes. So thinking about like stuffing baked or sweet potatoes with chili. The potatoes themselves are great. They're a source of fiber. Lentil sloppy joes. So thinking about what you already love, like what is your favorite dish to consume, whether it's lunch or dinner or anything else, and where can you add a fiber-rich food? Like either add an additional fiber-rich food or swap out meat or dairy for something that is plant-based to add some fiber to that dish. So overall, fiber supports just lifelong health every day. I'll say like when I see clients or patients who start adding fiber to their plates, the three things that I most commonly hear immediately what they notice in their quality of life is better sleep. They say, I'm sleeping like a baby. They say they feel lighter. And that's because of the concept we talked about earlier in the talk, where you can eat a lot of volume, but you're not getting that heavy caloric load to weigh you down. It's lighter in calories, and you just feel lighter. And because of that, you have more energy. So the third thing they mentioned is that they have more energy. And that's most likely a combination of eating less calories so they don't feel weighed down, so they have more energy. It's also because that fiber is supporting healthy bacteria in their gut, which is going to help them thrive more. They're going to have less inflammation. Their metabolism is going to run more efficiently. So they're overall going to have more energy and feel better just from the fiber feeding the healthy bacteria in their gut. And then also that blood sugar stability. They have steady energy throughout the day. So those are the immediate effects when people start adding fibers to their plates. And then, of course, that weight management comes along with that over time. It helps to keep you full. It supports the gut health, and then long-term reduction in any chronic lifestyle diseases like heart disease, diabetes, certain types of cancer. And then healthy aging overall. When you think about it, when we have more energy, we feel better physically and mentally. We are aging in a healthful way. We are aging well. We are connecting more with people around us. We are connecting more with nature. When we feel better, our life is better. So we have overall long-term wellness, and this comes from a powerful plant foundation. I did want to mention one thing about the bacteria in our gut. I just not to go back, but I did want to say it takes time to adapt. So when sometimes I'll see folks adding beans to their plate or any other, just increasing their fiber intake, and they can sometimes they're waking up the bacteria. I like to say you're waking up those bacteria that have been sleeping for a while, and they start munching away at that fiber, and that can produce some of that gassiness, that distension. That is normal. I will say when you start adding, either increasing your fiber or adding new fiber-rich foods to your plate, because each of those foods, the foods that we've been talking about here today, they contain different types of fiber in various amounts. So you're waking up different bacteria in your gut. And it could take a couple of days to adjust. It could take a week to adjust. It could take a couple of weeks to adjust. So give yourself some time, and if you can be a little patient during that. I know it's uncomfortable initially, but I promise the payoff is so worth it. Just drink plenty of water, chew thoroughly, start small, go back to all those tips that I mentioned because it can take a little bit of time for those bacteria, that fiber to or your body to adjust to the fiber. But over time, you will. So, key takeaways, most people are not getting enough fiber. We talked about that, and it's really helpful just to think about how fiber helps us support fullness and how much volume we can eat with still getting less calories, but the nutrient-dense foods that are fueling our entire bodies and minds to really help us thrive. And tiny additions can make a really huge difference. So, maybe just start with one thing. What is one easy way you could add more fiber today? Maybe it's just adding one thing to your plate. So I am going to stop there. I have not been looking at the time, and I wanted to see if we have any questions. I see some things in the chat. It
And
looks like,
Nichole, I want to say, first of all, thank you. That was amazing. What I'd like to do is just go through the next couple slides really quickly, and then take the questions.
perfect.
So if we can go to the next slide. But your presentation was amazing, very, very powerful. And I really liked the point that you made about going slow because it can wake up bacteria. I know specifically with beans, there was some research and they found that like once you've adjusted, that people who eat a lot of beans don't have any more gas than anyone else. There was some actual research about that, which I thought was
Oh,
funny.
that's great.
So yes, an adjustment period, but then you're fine.
Yeah.
All right, so the Coalition for Healthy School Food works with food service directors around the country to increase plant-based meat alternates on the menus. And we are a formal partner with New York City Office of Food and Nutrition Services and have worked with them since 2005. And then we partner with individual schools and offer curriculum, educational resources, teacher lunch and learns, parent presentations, family dinner nights, and more. And we have these resources that if you're interested in making more of a cafeteria, classroom to cafeteria connection, this is something that is called Wellness Wake Up Call, and it's nutrition education in the form of easy to digest sound bites, a different topic each month with a healthy plant-based recipe that takes just 10 to 20 seconds per day. A lot of schools will read it over the public announce the PA system. We also have this other resource called Feel Good Food Cards, which shows a food on the front and then five interesting facts plus two more pictures on the back. And a lot of cafeterias will use these to show what's on their menu that day, what plant foods are on the menu. They could be laminated or you could put them in little frames, but they're also used in the classroom and they come with instructions for all different kinds of ways to use them. And then this is really funny because talking about constipation, we thought, why not put some nutrition education on the back of bathroom stall doors? So these are called stall stories. And and there would be one for each month. So the idea would be to change them out every month. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link in the chat. And the link is to request these resources. So if you're interested in any of those resources, you can fill out this Google form to request them. Okay, so now we'll go to questions and answers, and I will look at the questions. Nichole, the first question was, is this being recorded? And yes, it's recorded, and there will be a link in our next newsletter, which comes out either June 1st or 2nd. So you'll be able to see a recording. Do you have a recommendation of the ratio or amount of soluble versus insoluble fiber? Or doesn't it matter as long as you're meeting the daily amount?
Oh, that's a great question. I think we can really get into minutia. I think when we think about like numbers and how much soluble and how much insoluble, and really, it's about variety because every, oats have a lot of soluble fiber, but they also have insoluble fiber. So there isn't a single food that has like only soluble or only insoluble. So it'd be really hard to calculate. So really it's just about variety and meeting that total number, but getting that variety of plant-based foods. And there's research showing the American Gut Health Project it was research looking at over 11,000 citizen scientists that recorded what they ate. They're scientists, so they were very specific about recording what they ate, and they sent their poop stand samples into a lab. And what they found was that the variety of plant-based foods, it wasn't any like specific soluble or insoluble, but the variety of plant-based foods was what helped to increase the diversity of their gut microbiome, which ultimately leads to those health outcomes that we were talking about. So really it comes down to just eating a variety of plant-based foods. All plants are going to have fiber, and as you eat that variety. Now, I will say one caveat: if you are if you have high cholesterol, as an example, we can lean more heavily into those foods that are higher in soluble fiber. So a lot of times when folks will say, I'm doing all the right things and my cholesterol's still high, I'm eating all plant-based, we might fine tune it by emphasizing absolutely have oats at breakfast, um, add more beans to your plate. So we might fine tune it a little bit by getting some of those the more of the soluble fiber, but really it's just about variety for overall health and meeting that fiber number.
That's great. Someone said, how do we get the feel good food cards? So the link in the chat goes to a Google form where you can request them. The next question is, can you speak about how to be successful on a low carb diet with high fiber foods, i.e., beans, whole grain rice, quinoa, etc., are high in carbs, which we think are counterproductive to losing weight?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. Yeah, so there's keto plant-based that some people follow it and they have success with it, but it's like very heavy on the vegetables, of course. And I'm not even sure that like whole grains would be a part of that because to be in ketosis, you need very low carbohydrate. But if you're eating beans and whole grains, you're getting really a healthy dose, like the healthy carbohydrates. So rethinking the type of carbohydrates when we think about low carb and why it can be beneficial for some people, it's because they're removing the refined carbohydrate out of their diet and they may be leaning more into proteins and vegetables. And that's really a large reason why people have success with it is because they're taking all the ultra processed carbohydrate out of their diet. But when we consume whole grain carbohydrate in the form of whole grains and beans, and of course vegetables and fruits, we're getting so much in that whole matrix. We're getting more than just the carbohydrate. And that's the thing too, like thinking about the whole package, not just like that one macronutrient. So with those carbohydrate rich foods, you're also getting a portion of that carbohydrate is going to be fiber, of course, but also protein, and you're getting all those phytochemicals, all the compounds that give those plant-based foods their beautiful colors um, and vitamins and minerals. So you're getting this whole matrix that supports metabolism and gut health and overall health. So having a balance of carbohydrate, protein, and fat through this variety of plant-based foods is so important. And there is also research showing that when people remove like a whole food category like whole grains from their diet, they don't just remove that whole carbohydrate. They're removing, of course, the fiber that is a part of that carbohydrate, and they also see some of their beneficial microbes in their gut die off. So that you can bring them back when you start eating them. But I think that's when we think about low or no carb diets and removing whole food groups, that's what can happen. We have to think about it beyond just calories and carbohydrate and what's really happening to our gut health and how that can affect our entire system, including our metabolism.
That's such a good answer. And I just want to add or ask you a few more questions in relation to that because the I want to emphasize something you said. When people go on a low carb diet, the biggest benefit they're getting from it is that they're not eating all the refined carbohydrates, but that actually unrefined carbohydrates are super healthy and are associated with traditional diets around the world where people are the longest lived. So if they're unrefined carbohydrates like whole grains or starchy vegetables like sweet potatoes and winter squash and potatoes, those are actually really associated with good health. And then also that although there's some people like people who have epilepsy or some other people who might need a
Right.
super low carbohydrate diet, but for most people is actually not healthier because I believe that there's research that shows that like yes, you have these initial changes because you're removing all this refined food, but then like a few years down the line you're seeing more cancer. Can
Right.
you talk about that a little bit?
Exactly. Yes. Right. So many benefits to those starchy vegetables that you mentioned in the longest lived areas in the world that are also like the healthiest areas in the world, like the blue zones in Okinawa, Japan, for example, the Japanese sweet potato or purple sweet potato, it makes up like 60% of their diet, and they are very healthy um, and happy and mobile late in life. And, that plays into the research with these starchy vegetables. There's resistant starch in them, and this resistant starch acts like a fiber in our gut, also feeds a beneficial bacteria. And exactly what you said, Amy, so much of this, when we see the benefits of low or no carb diets, and it is because so we don't know where we always have to ask the question, what were they eating before? And in research, we do this, but when we just see a headline that says no carb or low carb diets can help you lose weight or help you think more clearly, because that's another one that I think. But I think people are thinking more clearly and losing the weight because they're not consuming sugar anymore. They're not consuming those packaged foods that are filled with ultra processed food like stuff that wasn't giving their body any nutrition. So once you start removing some of those things that might be clouding their minds and causing the weight gain, they're going to see that short-term benefit. But long term, these these diets are not only wiping out the bacteria in our gut, but that when I just always ask, like, are these people pooping? Are they must be walking around chronically constipated. But there's digestion, and there's also, because you're removing so much of the fiber, it becomes a low fiber diet. So I can only imagine what's happening to their gut microbes as they continue on this low carb diet. As I mentioned, when you remove whole food groups that are high in fiber, you are not feeding that good bacteria in your gut, so they're not thriving. And what happens when your good bacteria don't thrive? You don't thrive. And long term, this creates short-term inflammation, and long-term, that creates long-term inflammation. And that long-term inflammation is what we see as the result is chronic diseases. So heart disease, diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's. So, the longer that short-term inflammation might be tolerable for those people in exchange for the weight loss and that clear thinking that they're getting from cutting out the ultra processed foods. But long term, they're going to be back at square one and trying to figure out why they're not feeling well and why their cholesterol is increasing. And, they're seeing the results of omitting fiber rich foods from their diet.
Thank you so much. It is time for us to end the webinar, but I want to just say one more thing, two more things. One is there's a person whose question we didn't answer. So if you want to stay on the webinar for a minute, we'll answer it after we officially end it. It's about flaxseed. And the other thing I wanted to say is, with the food industry, there's a huge profit motive. And so there's a lot of misinformation out there, but the research is really clear. Thousands upon thousands of studies have shown that the more plants a person eats or a whole food plant-based diet have been successful in reversing heart disease and type 2 diabetes and extending cancer survival time. And a low-fat whole food plant-based diet is the most successful diet for weight loss. And so the research is really clear about this. So anything at all that you do to move in that direction is a great step. So I want to thank you, Nichole, for being here. Your presentation was amazing. And we're not going to turn off the webinar. Bob, our tech person, thank you very much for your help. Leave it on a minute. So if anybody wants to stay on and hear the answer about is flaxseed a good add-on if you don't like beans, you could stay on. But otherwise, thank you everyone for being here. And thank you so much, Nichole. And thanks, Bob, for your help in the background. And thank you to all of you for attending. All right, so now we can we can answer for anyone who wants to stay on in here. Someone said, "Is flaxseed a good add-on if you do not like beans?" Or maybe you can also talk about what if you don't like beans.
Right. Yes, that's a great question. I know substitutions are a big thing if you don't like something. Well, first, I will start with that because um, I hear this often. It's also something I've experienced myself. But I don't love the taste of beets, but when I prepare them differently, I actually really like them. So first, before you say if it's a tolerance issue or an allergy or something like that, then that's a whole different story. But if it's something that you just don't like, I would encourage you to try it at least 7 different ways. I know that sounds like a lot, but whether it's cooked, raw, the way things are cut, what you have with that food, it completely transforms the food into something different. So, using beets as an example for me, I don't love raw beets, but when I shred a raw beet, it's great. I don't taste it in my salad. And when I have it mixed with grain bowl or a salad and a delicious, like, a tahini based sauce or something on top, I love them. Or when they're pickled, I do like those too. So it just depends. My husband doesn't like kale. He will not do kale. But if I chop it really tiny and put it in the salad with romaine, he'll eat it. He likes it. He doesn't taste it. It's fine. So I would say if it's just like a strictly like factor, there's so many beans, there's so many varieties. So you could try like, lentil sloppy joes or maybe some refried beans in a taco, just smear them on the butt, like just a little bit. Try that. But if it's a tolerance issue, and I know a lot of people say like beans don't like me because they cause the gassiness. Going back to the tips that I mentioned earlier, um, try cooking them yourself. Pressure cooker works really well and breaking down some of those gassy compounds. I used to never be able to handle chickpeas until I started cooking them myself, and I can get them like really soft and they're great. Now they're my favorite. So I'll just say try it many different beans in different ways if you can, and start small with just those couple of tablespoons cooked well. To see if that changes things, or even like hummus. Like hummus is a great way to get beans, and that's pretty, how it's blended and it doesn't taste like beanie. Um, that said, substitutes for beans. If beans are still a no-go for you, flaxseed's wonderful. It doesn't have gram per gram the same protein as beans, but it is an excellent source of those phytochemicals I was talking about, omega-3 fatty acids, packed with omega-3 fatty acids, as well as like vitamins and minerals. And it does have some fiber and it does have some protein. So having a tablespoon or two of ground flax meal a day can be a very healthy addition to your plate. Substitutes for beans in terms of a protein, when I think of beans, I think of the fiber and the protein content. Tofu, tempeh, edamame. Edamame is technically, they're beans, but depending on what beans you're talking about. So maybe that's an option for you. Nuts and seeds. I mean, if you're trying to reach the same protein and with nuts and seeds as beans, you're going to get a lot more fat. So you just have to be careful of, most studies look at 1 to 1.5 ounces of nuts um, as a part of a healthy diet. And it depends on the nut. Like peanuts are one of the highest protein, technically a legume, a bean, or a legume. But peanuts are high in protein. But again, just be careful of the fat content. So yeah, I guess my main thing would say like try beans if it's just a thing that you don't like, and maybe try them in different ways and different beans to start and then take it from there. But protein does add up. I will say beans are like a really big source of protein on a plant-based diet, but whole grains. When you look, whenever I look at analyze diets from folks that are eating exclusively plant-based, that protein really adds up. I mean, leafy greens have protein. You have to eat a lot of leafy greens, and that's okay, but the protein adds up. But whole grains, especially the pseudo grains like quinoa, buckwheat, and amaranth, they're very high in protein. So they could definitely boost the protein if you're not consuming beans.
I mean, I think it's fascinating that the US RDA is, I think it's 8 to 12% of our calories from protein.
Yeah, I
right?
mean,
And almost everything has more than 8%. Like, I mean, fruits don't, but
right, fruits are pretty low, but
most
it
other
really
foods.
does add up. It comes down to variety again when we're talking about protein and getting enough protein on a plant-based diet. It is the same as fiber. It's just getting a variety of plant-based foods to get all the protein you need throughout the day. And the actual total quantity of protein, when you eat enough calories, adds up when you're getting a variety of plant-based foods, and your body can get all of the amino acids it needs. We have a 24-hour amino acid pool that can set where our body can assemble the proteins that we need at any given time as long as we're eating enough calories and a variety of plant-based foods. So yeah, it really does add up.
A lot of people don't realize that protein is in all foods. Even though fruits don't have very much, like all whole foods have some protein and some have quite a lot, like vegetables and grains as a percentage of calories. But like you said, you'd have to eat a lot of greens, but I think broccoli's like 40%
Yeah,
protein.
broccoli is very high. Yeah, but if that encourages you to eat more veggies to get more protein, that's not a bad thing. But
I know.
yeah, so yeah,
Well,
break
thank
down a
you.
variety.
Oh,
Thank you.
there's one more question. Can you answer?
Yes.
Oh, will we get the slides? Yes, yes. In the next newsletter, which comes out either June 1st or 2nd, there will be a link to this webinar, which is recorded. So thank you. Thank you so much, Nicole. Thank you, everybody. A lot of people stayed on, 49 people stayed on to listen to these
Wonderful.
extra questions. So thank you so much, all of you. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Bob. We really appreciate you, and we hope to see you next month at our webinar next month.
Thank you, Amy. And
All
thanks
right.
again,
Thanks so much.
everybody.
Bye bye.
Thanks so much. Bye.